Hey everybody, excited to be doing another drive-through today. This will be the last drive-through before we release the 3.0 version, as the 3.0 version is going to have a lot in it that we need to cover. So stay tuned for that upcoming release. Today I want to showcase some of the tips and tricks I use when using the canvas. So rather than doing just one output today, we'll do a couple using some of the techniques I'd like to show. First, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the canvas and I'm going to create a white background. So I'll move my brush option settings to white, and then I'll use the fill bounding box, and that will give me kind of a white canvas to draw on. And then I'm going to go through and actually brush in a little bit of what I'm hoping to see. And I actually like to do this with a little bit of transparency. So we see that I've got my shape here. What I'm going to do is change my prompt. And you'll notice that I've got a white background part of the prompt in here as well. I typically find that when I'm doing this, it helps create the image. But then I'm going to go ahead and keep this at a pretty high image-to-image strength. We might want to do 0.89. And I'll give myself a couple of images just to have options. So I've got a couple of wrestlers now. This guy's probably my favorite. This one's pretty good as well. This guy's got some weird hands and legs and the kind of blue chest. So we'll take this guy. He's seemingly the cleanest. And what you'll see is because I did the white background, I now actually have a really easy character that I can cut out. So if I'm happy with this output, I can just use it. If I want to do some things like clean this up, I can do that and then regenerate those pieces. And if I want to, get some more detail in here before I finish this out, I can also do that. So I'll kind of zoom in. Maybe we'll regenerate this guy's face. We'll say, I do like the blue beard, so we'll do blue beard. And we'll give ourselves, let's actually reduce the image-to-image strength here before we do that so that we get what we're looking for. So now we've got a couple of options to pick from, and they all look pretty good. This guy probably looks the best, though. I like this kind of bloody war paint on him. And so now we've got a pretty good character that we can use and cut out and put that into a different background or use that in some other composition that we're doing. So this is a really interesting and useful technique. Anytime you're trying to create a character that needs to be composed somewhere else, if you're just trying to get one single asset out of the system, this is a great way to use it. But what you might find is that the size of this is insufficient for what you need. So this is a 768 by 768. So we'll go ahead and save this to the gallery, come back out, and we'll use the upscale option here. Now there's two ways that you can do this. If you're just upscaling to something like 1500 by 1500, you can do an image to image, and that'll preserve a lot of the detail. But what we'll go ahead and do is we'll 4x this because we really want to get some size out of this picture. We'll upscale that, and now we have our upscaled image. And this is going to be a lot larger of an image. But if we send this to the canvas, we'll notice that a lot of the detail has kind of been lost in this. And what we want to do is probably go in and add some of that detail back. And so similar to what we just did to get the details of the face improved, we'll go in and just start layering in some additional detail here. Now we like that blood, so we'll kind of pull that back in. And now we'll increase our size and go for these hands first. Got here. That one probably looks the best. And we'll go ahead and give him some more details and definition on these muscles as well. Pull this around and focus in on everything else on his body, avoid taking too much of the beard out. All right, so let's see here. A couple of these have some weird lightning ripples. This one probably looks the best, though. I think this is decent, although we do have some chest problems over here that we can come back and fix. So I'm just going to apply this same technique to the rest of the image, and we'll catch up after I'm done. All right, so now we've gone through and added that detail back in. This actually is a much higher resolution image. We've got a lot more detail. Obviously, there are some imperfections. Especially had some fun playing around with this knee, trying to get it to look even remotely human. But in this case, we'll take this as an example of what you can do. And obviously, if you were doing this for your own assets, you would spend a little bit more time perfecting out those minor details. But for what we've got here, this is a pretty good rough end of character, and only took us a couple of minutes. For the next canvas trick, what I'm going to show you is just a technique for getting some really easy character turnarounds. So I'll throw this character template in. This is just a pre-existing one that has kind of character turning around. And the important thing here is not really to have any of the details carried over, but actually just use this as a base for us to generate new imagery on top of it. So I'm going to change the scale pretty high, and then I'm going to select most of this image here. And you'll notice I've got the character turner LoRa enabled. This is one of the community LoRa embeddings that just helps with the character turnarounds and kind of driving that consistency between each of these. And we'll go into this and just kind of add in some details like red wizard robes. I mean, I'm describing things that really are not going to be supported by this image right now. And so I'll come in and use my brush to add those details in. So I will layer in some robes here, and I don't have to be super perfect with this. Just kind of giving in the rough details. And then what I'll go ahead and do, maybe I'll do this a little bit lower here. We'll go ahead and invoke. Okay, so we got some of these, some good details. I don't really love the hat that it added, and the faces got a little bit warped in this process, but everything else looks okay. I like the costume itself that it's created for this character. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to accept that, and then I'm going to go in and just move the character turner LoRa, and we'll just select the face. And just regenerate this piece. Maybe I'll do hat. And I'm recognizing now I left my strength a little bit high for what I'm trying to do here. We're going to pull that down to 63. And it really wants to keep that hat. Well, we'll just let it keep that hat then. And now you'll notice that one thing that you have to do is give a couple of options here just so that you can get something that looks relatively consistent. We have some concepts for how we can improve this workflow that we'll be sharing in the future. But for now, what I would recommend is just giving yourself a couple of options here and trying to find something, roll the dice on the seed to find something that generates relatively close to what you got in the first pass. Most of the time I find if you don't change the prompt too much, you'll land on something that eventually gets to a close representation. Like this one I think is pretty close. So we'll keep it there, and then we'll get around and do this character turnaround on the back. Typically I find when you're looking at the back of the character, you need to give a little bit more context of the pose. And once we have control net inside of the canvas, you'll see some techniques that we can apply to this as well. But for now, we'll just go through this process and kind of talk about its generations as it goes through. Kind of wants to give this guy long hair, so we'll type in short hair. See if we can control that a little bit here. It's going to try to take the hat off now that we added the short hair piece. Now that we added short hair, now it wants to take the hat off because we're specifically controlling that. That kind of makes sense. Do hat with short hair, and we'll lower the image strength here. And I think that one probably looks the most accurate. So now we've got our character turnaround. You know, this is a quick rough-in of the character, but you know, looks relatively consistent in each of those angles. A couple of details that we could go in and do if we wanted to make this a final asset. I could probably do some work on the hands. But overall, this is just a quick demonstration of how you can use pre-existing images as templates on the canvas to really accelerate how you're generating new imagery. So we'll clear the canvas. Really just kind of the process of using the canvas as an exploration tool. I think most of the time people think of the canvas as a place where you're generating a single final composition, but I like to also view it as a workspace for experimentation and prompt exploration. And so what I'll do is I'll just kind of zoom out a little bit and we'll add in a prompt. Maybe I'll take this one over here. And this one does have a LoRa in it as well, the noise offset LoRa. So I've got a movie poster of a boy backlit by fire, magical realism, yada, yada, yada. So there's a prompt here that we've got. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to generate one image. I'm going to control the seed. And so we'll just shuffle this here. We've got a new seed. We'll go ahead and leave this as Euler A and just kind of see what we get at 750 Euler A. Okay, cool. Image to image is not relevant because we're going to be generating a new image here. This will be a new text to image generation. And again, this is, you know, most of the time I think people think of the canvas as somewhere that you bring a pre-existing image, but you can actually do new text to image generations just by using the bounding box over an empty spot. And so in this case, we'll generate a 512 by 512 of this specific prompt using these settings in a specific seed. So we've got this picture of a boy. He's backlit by this like flame in the background, and you know, we've got a lot of good imagery there. But what happens when, you know, we want to see a different sampler? Well, with everything set the exact same, including the seed, we can actually use the canvas to do those types of comparisons. So I'll switch the sampler. This is going to be everything exactly the same with the one exception of the sampler being different. And you'll notice it's got a completely different composition now, a little bit of a different look and feel. If we want to take this and go back to Euler A, what we can do is we can kind of write ourselves a quick note here. We'll allow ourselves to draw outside of the canvas, limit strokes to box. And we'll do this quick note on the side, Euler A. So then we'll come in here and we'll say what happens when we change the config scale to 5, for example. We get this image. It's mostly similar. There's a couple of different details, but that's typically what happens when you do something like the config changing. What happens when we change the prompt to music cover album of a boy backlit by fire? It's a movie poster. You know, we've got a completely different design there. And we obviously keep doing that. And if you want to, you can annotate and write little notes up top as you're doing these explorations. But ultimately, this is just a useful technique for playing around with the canvas and seeing different generations as you tweak the prompt and comparing them side by side. And kind of doing a little bit of additional housekeeping around note taking and such like that. So we'll do the same for our DPM PP2. Back to movie poster, keep this in line. So now we've got our different examples here, and if I'm being honest, I think my favorite is this one. This one's pretty good. Now lastly, what I want to show is just a couple of techniques that you can do with the LoRa's. So we'll go ahead and make another white background. Maybe actually we'll do a black background this time. And then I will do a little bit of a technique here where I come in and add in some brightness on top of this. So we'll do some transparent grays. And then I'll kind of continue doing that a little bit towards the center. Kind of created a little bit of a pixelated shape here for us. It's going to be our template. And then we will add in some rough detail. This out, do rows, loading in their magical realism. And I'm actually going to do a negative 0.75 for the noise offset. And what we'll see is that can kind of, it's an interesting way of using some of those more lighting and contrast based tools. We'll go ahead and add in woman, person, figure, character. Probably take out character design here. Art. That should help make sure that we don't get any people. That's pretty cool. I actually like that. It interpreted that as a little bit of a frame. So maybe if I turned this up a little bit, we get something else, and actually may try that here. I actually love that. That's pretty cool. Some interesting perspective and artwork there. It's got a little bit of window in the background. And I'm going to want to take that, and I think I'll want to send that to image. And what I'll do here is I'll just, this was 512 by 512, so I'll do 1024 by 1024. Leave the image strength pretty low at 0.35. And what this is going to allow us to do is really just upscale this image using the same technique that you would use with a high-res optimization. It's just a larger resolution and passing in an image-to-image diffusion process to kind of provide that detail as you scale it up. And at this low strength, we won't lose too much detail. And then I can take this, and I've got my new image. Actually may increase the image-to-image strength here just a little bit. Yeah, I think that gives us a little bit more detail that we're looking for without losing the composition itself, which is pretty cool. Awesome. Well, I hope this was a helpful review, some techniques and tips and tricks on how you can use the canvas in a couple of different ways. Looking forward to seeing what you create, and stay tuned for some exciting updates as we get closer to the 3.0 release.